think Joe Harris has to start. I think
Next
he
to
has
those
to
guys,
start.
absolutely.
Right. And then the other two spots to me are going to be fascinating because if I was coaching the team, I would think pretty hard about even possibly starting TLC. I know that sounds insane, but he's such a good fit next to the guys we just said. I mean, I have been blown away at how good he looks shooting. Like, I mean, those corner threes look automatic for him at this point. But he's also doing more than just shooting wide open jump shots, Jason. I'm sure you've noticed this, but they have him coming off actions. And I don't know if you watched any TLC when he was at Philly or any of the other spots he was at. None of those coaches trusted him to shoot anything but a wide open three. And they certainly weren't doing what Jacques Vaughn was doing, where he's running off a screen for a three. That is a totally new aspect of his game. And if that is legit, that his ability to fit next to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving is going to be incredible
They
because
need shooters.
that's what I'm saying.
And Kevin Durant, as much as everyone calls him a polarizing figure, mentions Joe Harris by name constantly whenever he is interviewed on a podcast or with the NBA media, saying, Joe Harris, Joe Harris, Joe Harris. So I think that, Sean Marks, they have his bird rights. He will go outside the cap to sign him. Joe Tsai said he's willing to go outside the cap to pay for a championship contender. Harris wants to be there, but he's about to get his salary doubled. I mean, he could get a Danny Green type contract, 4 years, $60 million easily, and deserve every penny of that deal.
Yeah, 100%. So it's going to be really interesting to me to see what they do with the starting lineup. I don't think LeVert or Dinwiddie are particularly great fits, to be honest, next to KD and Kyrie. So we'll be interested to see what happens there. Before we move on, I just want to say one more shout out. Obviously, the Raptors, amazing. Best defensive team in the league right now. Looking really, really good. Obviously, everyone's sleeping on them. We're not even picking them to win the East. But I just want to give a quick shout out to Rodions Kurucs, who I think is I don't want to exaggerate, but I think he kind of saved his career right now in Orlando. He was kind of in the doghouse before the bubble. He was not getting a lot of minutes, and he's looked absolutely phenomenal. He has been one of their best on-off guys since they've been in the bubble in Orlando, has looked great on both ends, and has shown that he has a future on this team and in this league, which, if for nothing else, is huge for the Nets because it's a huge trade chip since he is a young guy who can really defend. And he's shown a little bit offensively, too. So great job by him. Let's move on to the kind of the juicy.
Fouled out in 16 minutes in game one, though. Can't be doing that every game.
He still hacks a lot, but the talent is there. He looks like he could shoot a little bit. He's even pushed the ball a little in transition. Anyways, we're not going to turn this into the Rodion Kurucs show. But just looking at the other two matchups, I think these are really juicy. I want to save one of these for last because I'm really intrigued. Heat Pacers, I think, is one of these series, Jason, that looks closer on paper than it actually is going to be. I don't trust the Pacers. I just think that the coaching mismatch is huge here. I love Nate McMillan. He's a great coach. But Eric Spoelstra is one of the elite coaches in the league. Indiana, without Oladipo at full strength, just don't have the star. I mean, with apologies to TJ Warren, who played great in the bubble, Jimmy Butler is that guy. They feel like a team that could punch a little above their weight right now. I just think the Pacers are overmatched. So for me, Jason, we talked about the Nets. I have the Nets going down in 5, gentlemen sweeping them. And I really have something pretty darn close here. I'm going to give the Heat 6 games, but I'm really tempted to say Heat in 5 because I just think that the Pacers are overmatched.
Well, I'm going Raptors in 6. I think I'll get a little biased here and hope that the Nets can pull the rabbit out of the hat, at least make this a series. But moving on to Heat Pacers, I mean, the Heat won pretty handily in game 1, and then the news that Victor Oladipo was injured in the first quarter, exited the game, and he went to the hospital to be evaluated. It's an eye injury. And for a guy that worked so hard to get his way back to the basketball court after suffering such a devastating injury, for him to go out like that in game 1, just really frustrating to see. I know we were expecting some fireworks between Jimmy Butler and TJ Warren. Not much of that in game 1. But yeah, unless Oladipo can get healthy, which we hope he does and get back, I don't see this being much of a series at all.
Yeah, completely agree. So let's get to the really good one here. I mean, it seemed like things had shifted one way, Jason, with Ben Simmons going out, and to a lesser degree, Glenn Robinson, who I actually think would have been really helpful for them in the series. But there were some losses here, and then suddenly game 1, the Celtics get a nice little victory over the Sixers, but huge news after the game. Gordon Hayward is injured, ankle sprain. That can't make anyone in that organization feel good. That is in addition to the fact that he is planning to leave the bubble in September for the birth of his child, Jason. The Celtics might not have Gordon Hayward until the NBA Finals. There's a real chance of that happening at this point. We don't know, but he is going to miss the rest of round one and all of round two. If they make the conference finals and the birth of his child does not happen as expected, it's earlier or later, he could be there for part of that series, but he's not going to be 100%. I mean, how big is this loss for them, Jason, and how does it affect that series?
I mean, it's kind of a level playing field now, don't you think? With Simmons already being out, now you're losing Hayward. Kemba Walker showing that he's almost 100% healthy. I mean, I'm not big on the Sixers team. I know you have been all year long. I don't think they fit. They let Butler go, replace him with Al Horford. Too many bigs, not enough shooting. Tybalt is a nice piece, I will say that. But I think if the Sixers lose this series, Brett Brown will be shown the door. And then eventually, maybe after one more chance or so, they will move one of Simmons or Embiid. This isn't working. The process is just not working. There's no fit here. There's no harmony. So even with Gordon Hayward out up to 4 weeks, I mean, that essentially takes you through the first two rounds. Do the Celtics have enough to win without him? And I think it's going to be a lot on Kemba, on Tatum, on Brown to carry the load. But I ultimately think the Celtics will win the series in 6. I do not believe in Philadelphia at all. As good as Embiid is, I mean, he could take full advantage of his size and really put up some nice numbers, but will it be enough to beat the Celtics team who are much better coached with Brad Stevens at the helm than Brett Brown with the Sixers? It just doesn't seem fair to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that loss is going to be really significant in this series. And the reason I mention that is that I think it is going to change the way that the Sixers fundamentally defend the Celtics. And the reason I say that is that basically Hayward, for those of you who don't watch a lot of Celtics games, he has two primary functions on this team. One is that he is there, really prior to the emergence of Jason Tatum, he was their primary secondary ball handler. So what I mean by that is, it sounds a little redundant, is that basically when Kemba Walker's trapped, when a team kind of attacks Kemba Walker on the pick and roll, the outlet would usually be to Gordon Hayward, who would then kind of run a 4-on-3, or he would initiate. He's a guy who can basically run the offense for them. And prior to Jason Tatum stepping up, that was really important for them. Now, come playoff time, the significance of this is that Kemba Walker is a smaller guard. So a team like Philadelphia, who has a lot of length, is going to really pressure him and try to get him to shoot over that length. And in this game, what the Celtics did was they obliterated their defense using those larger wings with Tatum and Brown. And Hayward was able to kind of be a perimeter release valve for them to pass off to. Without him, it's very likely that Marcus Smart's going to move into the starting lineup, Jason. And that's going to have a huge ripple effect on this series, because I think it's going to turn into a rock fight. And I think this is going to be the best series from here on in the first round. From games 2 to 7, which I have the Celtics winning in 7, I think this is going to be the best series we see, because a rock fight is just what the Sixers want. They have the personnel for that, and without Ben Simmons, they really can't afford to get into these higher scoring series, because they do kind of lack some of the offensive firepower of these other teams. But now they match up a lot better with the Celtics. They don't have to worry as much about having Horford out there. If they have Horford out there, he has a nice place to sit on a guy like Marcus Smart, who's not really much of a shooter. Now, all of a sudden, when they go small, they don't have to worry about someone switching onto Jason Tatum and getting beasted in the post by him, or just absolutely dusted out on the perimeter. So this is huge for them, because it really restricts the options for the Celtics, who had an amazing top 5 or 6 guys, that now it's reduced by one guy, which makes a big difference, because it's going to put a lot more on the plate of both a guy like Marcus Smart, Jason, but also some of those guards like Romeo Langford, Semi Ojeleye. One of those guys is going to have to step up and fill in, or Brad Wanamaker. I mean, these guys are going to have to play meaningful minutes now, and I think that's asking a lot. I still do have the Celtics squeaking by in 7 games. But I think, Jason, this is going to be an incredibly tight series the rest of the way. And I'm going to personally be trying to watch every single game.
And I have Celtics in 6. Again, I do not believe in the Sixers. But before we go, we have some non-bubble news. Ben, you got your early Christmas wish, man. The Bulls have fired Jim Boylen. So what do you make of that?
Yes, this is the happiest moment I've had in a little while, Jason. I think it's a really good sign that they were able to identify Boylen as a substandard coach, probably the worst coach in the league. It's huge for them to get rid of him, huge for the development of the young guys on this team. You couple that with the move to get Karnisovas from the Nuggets, who, I'm just going to say it, Jason. I mean, if you look at the drafting resume of the Nuggets, I think you can make a case that they have been the best drafting team in the last decade. They might not have had as many bites of the apple in the top 10 to get star players, but really the only miss you can really talk about, unless you want to talk about some of the draft day trades where they maybe didn't know who they were trading for, basically, would be Emmanuel Mudiay. I mean, they have been unbelievable. They drafted Nurkic, Jokic, Murray, obviously, on their team, Michael Porter, who now looks like a future All-Star, and a host of other guys. They swindled the Bulls on the trade for McDermott. I mean, they've done a great job between Masai Ujiri, Tim Connolly, and Karnisovas. So very excited for the Bulls' future. I think this is huge, and I'm really excited to see what he does this offseason and what we can do in the draft. So great news. Anything else from your side, though, Jason, before we get out of here?
Another head coaching opportunity. The Pelicans, much to my surprise, have parted ways with Alvin Gentry, which falls in line with what Jason Cordner said last week, that, they may look to retool, maybe reshape the roster, get some better fits around Zion. But other than the Nets opening, that Pelicans job is going to be very coveted, and all the same candidates going for the Brooklyn job, the Ty Lues, the Jason Kids, the Van Gundy brothers, Elmo, Big Bird, the Swedish Chef, all these coaching candidates. Now that Pelicans job is looking very attractive because you have a chance to coach Zion Williamson, Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, all in the young portion of their career. Still some solid veterans on that roster. Very desirable job. So I think Gentry got the unfair shake. Zion played, 25 games? I know they didn't show up in the bubble at all, but they have some nice young pieces, and I was a bit disappointed by that move.
I mean, we're prime in basketball never sleeps territory now, Jason. I mean, we're going to have another 2 months of basketball. Then we're going to have the off season compressed, and before you know it, it's going to be basketball time again. So there's so much going on. We appreciate everyone listening in. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review.
Oh, 5 stars if you really feel like giving Ben a nice week in Cape Cod.
And we will talk to you guys next week.
Peace.